start again. It's a rich thing.
What's going on, everybody? It's the Bulls Show, aka Aiden, and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, a couple of videos ago I talked about how the Chicago Bulls GM position was considered the least desirable and one of the most difficult positions in the NBA that not many general managers would actually want to pursue. And I kind of talked about why I don't feel like this is the case and why I give different reasons as to why this GM spot could be one of the hardest in the league to actually get done in order to make this team successful. And in the end, a lot of the actual moves and decisions that makes this GM job so difficult were moves and decisions that the Bulls kind of made up themselves in many ways, what this regime ended up doing. So today, it's kind of like a part 2 to this video. Of course, we talked about the mess and how the Bulls are stuck and how I said the Bulls are not stuck. And now I'm going to react to another article from Fansided discussing the 5 ways the Chicago Bulls can get out of the mess that they built upon themselves. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show, turn notifications on, and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls and whether or not you believe the Bulls will get out of this mess, or even if you think it is a mess. As I said in that video as well, in order to make change happen, you have to be willing to change. It is as simple as that. It's probably one of the most basic elements of change and how change management actually happens. You need to want the change to happen. You can't force a change upon someone if they're not willing or wanting to change. So it is as simple as that. And that's how the Bulls front office, that's the decision they need to make. They have to be willing to make these changes, because they might not feel like change is necessary. They might not feel like we need to split up the core. They may not feel like we need to rebuild or retool. It's really up to them. That they have all the power in this instance. Bulls fans can think what we like, but if the front office are not willing to change, then change will not happen. So that's what we need to wait and see about at the end of the day. But there are 5 ways that this article suggests that the Bulls can get out of this so-called mess that we put ourselves in. And let's talk about it, with the 5th option being sign and trade Nikola Vucevic. Basically saying how good Nikola Vucevic is as a center, that teams would be wanting to pursue him, and that for Chicago, after one season in the playoffs, it is time to move on. They don't feel like we can get there again and stuff like that. And you could get Vucevic for a couple of first round picks. You might be able to get Vucevic for a couple of role players that can maybe fit this team a little bit more than what Vucevic may fit this team as. And look, I am always in the mindset of sign and trades are really difficult to make, but you also got to realize who you're dealing with here. This Bulls front office has used sign and trades countless times, ladies and gentlemen. They use sign and trades to get DeMar DeRozan. They use sign and trades to get Lonzo Ball. You guys probably won't remember this one, but they did a sign and trade to get Daniel Tice to the Houston Rockets, and we got a trade exception, I believe, or something along those lines. So we've done sign and trades in the past, so I can only imagine that a sign and trade is definitely on the table for a player like Nikola Vucevic and other players in the future. I do believe a sign and trade can always happen, and for this Bulls team it's probably more likely to happen than not, but at the end of the day it is still very difficult to make. You could just send for Vucevic on his merry way in free agency. A thing about a sign and trade is Vucevic would have to want to go to that team. He has to be willing to accept a contract, he has to be willing to play for that team in order for a sign and trade to work. And I don't know Vucevic's character personally, but he might be the type of guy that doesn't necessarily want to play for different teams. He might not want to go and play, for example, a team like Detroit or a team like Atlanta, you know. He might want to stay in Chicago. He might want to see out his career here. I've always found Vucevic as a loyal guy. He's been loyal to Orlando for so long until Orlando had to trade him. And then now I see him being loyal to the Bulls. So we're going to have to trade him. I think it's as simple as that if you don't want Vucevic here. So I see his future, Vucevic's future. I see him wanting to commit to this team. It's really up to the Bulls if we want to see that future for Vucevic. It is as simple as that. Let's talk about step number 4, or in this case number 2, and it's about DeMar DeRozan. Essentially, the Bulls should sell DeMar DeRozan for draft picks, saying that DeMar DeRozan is an elite player, a guy that again was in an MVP category 2 seasons ago, had one of his best seasons last season as well. We cannot forget that, even though the Bulls were mediocre. They also talked about how long he would be a Chicago Bulls player. They mentioned his contract and how he's on an expiring deal. The Bulls may have to try and, I guess, look for a way to extend him if we don't try and sell him off, and there could be a potential high amount of draft picks with DeMar DeRozan. I think the number suggested there was 2 first-round picks for DeMar DeRozan. I'm sure you can get a little bit more from that as well, but maybe you don't at this point in time. And look, again, it's very similar to how I see Vucevic as well. DeMar DeRozan I often see as a loyal guy, as a loyal person to this team. So in the end, I see him committing his future to the Chicago Bulls as well. In fact, he's talked so highly about what his time in Chicago means to him. So I'm assuming if the Bulls want him and DeMar DeRozan wants the Bulls, there is a future where DeMar DeRozan stays here. But, you know, maybe this is the right time to sell DeMar DeRozan. I'm not too sure. That's a decision the Bulls front office will have to make. And ultimately, if you are going for a rebuild, again, I think all of these ideas are basing it around a rebuild. Not a retool, not a reshape, a complete and utter rebuild, which we know the front office is not going to be too keen on at the end of the day. It's probably the last thing on their mind, but it's still a possibility. If you trade DeMar DeRozan for a draft pick, this basically signals that rebuild. You could trade away Vucevic in a sign and trade and still compete, in my opinion. You might bring those role players in. A couple of those role players might be able to do the job that Nikola Vucevic did on his own. Stuff like that. You might be able to get draft picks in return. But with DeMar DeRozan, if you're selling him off for complete draft picks, that is the signal of the rebuild, in my opinion. So this is probably the option that I see least likely happening, or one of the options that I see least likely happening. I think if you trade DeMar DeRozan, or if this Bulls team wants to trade DeMar DeRozan, they're looking for an all-star caliber player in return. I don't see them doing any more or any less than that, in all fairness. I think that's where the Chicago Bulls are going to go, but that's just my opinion. I could be wrong, and maybe this is the sign of the rebuild. But moving into the next step, trading Zach LaVine for the highest bidder. Look, you're going to get a lot for Zach LaVine. I'll say that right now. If the Chicago Bulls are looking to trade Zach LaVine in the near future, there is going to be a lot that you could get in return. You could get a youngster that could potentially be growing into, I guess, a potential all-star caliber player. You could be getting multiple first-round picks. You could be getting all these things with Zach LaVine. But which teams are going to be willing to do that? He's on a max contract, so he's not exactly easy to trade. Which teams are you going to do business with? And which prospects are going to come to this Chicago Bulls team in return? That's a question, and I don't know who has the answer to that, in all fairness. But, you know, if you do trade Zach LaVine, you will get a lot in return. I think he demands that much with his ability last season and what he was able to bring towards the end of the season. You might be able to get even more for Zach LaVine if you waited another season and he has another great season. These are conversations the Bulls are going to have internally with themselves. But I've said it before, and I've said it again. The Chicago Bulls, I don't think, are going to trade Zach LaVine anytime soon. I think his foreseeable future is going to be here. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not I'll be right or wrong on that instance. But I'm fairly confident the Bulls are not going to get rid of Zach LaVine this offseason in many ways. I can't say the same about Vucevic, and I can't say the same about DeRozan, but I'm very confident that Zach LaVine will be here this season, this upcoming season. And the last one is deal Alex Caruso for draft capital. I've said for 1,000 times... this is not the last one, my apologies. But anyway, I've said this 1,000 times. If there's 2 first-round picks on the table for Alex Caruso, I'll do that deal in a heartbeat. No disrespect to Alex Caruso, but again, you know, we're talking about DeMar DeRozan getting 2 first-round picks. You're talking about Vucevic potentially getting a first-round pick. If Alex Caruso provides 2 first-round picks for the Chicago Bulls, I feel like that is worth the deal, in all fairness. So we'll have to wait and see how that could go. It could be an interesting sell for many teams around the NBA that maybe don't need their draft capital. And Alex Caruso is a great player. Very, very solid defensively. He made the all-defensive first team this season, I believe. So he's phenomenal on the defensive end, and any team would be lucky to have Alex Caruso, and I truly believe in my soul of souls we are lucky to have Alex Caruso. But Alex Caruso deserves to be on a contending team. Very similar to DeMar, very similar to Vucevic. These guys are getting up there in age. They don't have the entire future ahead of them in the NBA where they can wait another 10 seasons, wait another 5 seasons to compete. These guys are in compete now mode. So either you find a way to help them compete, or you put them in a situation with a different team where they are going to compete. That's how I feel like the Bulls should be handling this situation, and Alex Caruso I feel like is in the same boat. And what's good about Alex Caruso is his contract is so affordable and it is very expendable. I think we can get a good return for Alex Caruso, but again, it's up to the Bulls and if they want to do it. And the last one is to basically save all the draft picks you're probably going to get with DeMar DeRozan, with Nikola Vucevic, with Alex Caruso, with Zach LaVine, and develop your youngsters. So I'm assuming this means you re-sign Kobe White, you re-sign Ayo Dosunmu, you obviously give a spot to Dalen Terry where he can finally get some minutes. You obviously keep Patrick Williams as well. I'm assuming in those trades you're going to get young talent as well and just build a young roster up and essentially go for a rebuild, start the tank in many ways. And I can understand people wanting to do that. Again, Kobe White has developed so nicely that people want him to have a bigger role on this team. Maybe the only way Kobe White can get a bigger role is if the team goes younger and if he becomes a top priority for this team. An interesting thought. Obviously, Dalen Terry getting time. I think everybody's been begging for that for so long now, and this is the opportunity for him to do so. People want to keep Ayo, but there's fears that the Bulls front office will pick between Kobe and Ayo. In this instance, you probably keep both of them. Patrick Williams as well will have more of an opportunity to be a top option, I would say. Not the number one option, but maybe the top option in his team. And that could obviously put more points on the board for him. And, you know, you go younger, maybe you're able to execute the style of play that the Bulls like to do in the sense of going fast, you know, transition offense and stuff like that. That could be a way to go. Defensively, you know, I don't think we'll be terrible, but again, we're just not going to be that great team, especially offensively, that we probably are now. You know, getting rid of Zach LaVine, a 24-point-per-game scorer, DeMar DeRozan, a 24-point-per-game scorer, Nikola Vucevic, a 17-point-per-game scorer. You're getting rid of all these guys, plus your best defender. You're not going to be the same team. You're basically going and hoping to rebuild this team from the draft. But look, at the end of the day, I'm not here to sell these options to you because personally, I don't know if I would do any of these options, in all fairness. If you're asking me, I think small changes are needed to make this team better for at least one more season and we go and attack it next season. I think that's where my mindset is at the moment, where, you know, maybe trading one of the core pieces and getting some shooting into this team would be the way to go for me. And, you know, if you improve your three-point shooting with, obviously, some of the attributes we have attacking the paint, I think we can be a better team. I'm not on board with trading every single core piece. I'm not on board with trading every single player that we have to deal just so we can go for a complete rebuild. I still think there's time to make that decision. We don't need to rush into that. But again, it goes to the point saying the Bulls made all these decisions. The Bulls drafted Patrick Williams. The Bulls will probably extend Vucevic. The Bulls signed DeMar DeRozan. The Bulls extended Zach LaVine. These are all situations that they put themselves in. If that's considered a mess, those are the options that can take us out of that mess if you feel like that is a mess. And again, the biggest question here is, does the front office feel like this is a mess? And will they have to deal with that mess? I'm not too sure. I'm not the front office. I'm not AK. I'm not Eversley. I'm not the people working inside the Chicago Bulls. These are just some of the suggestions. And honestly, you know, it gives you a broad perception of what we can do. Obviously, there's a lot more in detail. For example, if you're doing a sign and trade with Vucevic, which teams are interested in doing a sign and trade? What assets are they willing to give up? They could just come out and say, we looked for a sign and trade for Nikola Vucevic, but very similar to the trade deadline, we found nothing that improved our team, so we decided to keep Nikola Vucevic. Option there that could potentially be interesting for the Bulls. I'm not too sure. You trade DeMar DeRozan, what's the best trade value you're going to get out of him? Which teams are going to want to pursue him? You're going to have to give DeMar DeRozan the respect to pick his team, I would say, as well, in terms of a trade. I don't think you're just going to force him out to a different team unless, you know, I think the Bulls and DeMar have a great relationship. I don't think they're going to disrespect him like that. Zach LaVine, you know, he's going to be hard to trade. But the options are still there and it's possible to get done. So that's my whole point of this video, and those are the 5 ways the Chicago Bulls could build themselves out of this mess. Do you agree with these 5 ways? Personally, I don't think it's time to really do a lot of that. Some of them decisions you have to make now, like, you know, extending Vucevic, you're going to have to make that decision now. There's no other time. It's either now or never in many ways. But a lot of the other moves we can wait and see about. And if you do extend Vucevic, you can trade him in the future as well. So I would say I'm not really ready to make all of those moves straight away. But what I am saying is, if the Bulls want to go in that direction, there are paths to do so. We are not stuck in this mess. I don't think personally we have well, I do think we have the least desirable GM position for the owner's sake and the Lonzo Ball situation. But the other reasons, I don't think that makes us the least desirable position. I just think you just got to make the tough decisions to change them. It's not desirable. You just got to do it. You got to make the decisions and you got to stick by them. But that's it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next Chicago Bulls video. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned for more. Take care and peace.